So, MSU, or many small units in wargaming. MSU is a type of strategy where you build your army to contain many small units. And the question is, why would you want to do this? What are the benefits of small units over big units, and what are the drawbacks of small units over big units? Let's start with the cons. First off, if the unit is bigger, we've got more wounds in the unit. And as every wargamer player knows, not all models are created equal. The three guys in the middle right here are equipped with special gear. We've got the sergeant, he hits harder in combat. We've got a plasma gunner, obviously shoots better, and we've got the heavy weapon, which lends a lot more firepower than just a regular bolter guy. So, what's going to happen if the enemy fires at us? These poor subs, those are going to be the first to die. So, in the case that we've got a big unit of 10 men, 7 guys need to die before we lose any of our special gear. What would happen if we split them up in 2 squads of 5? Usually 1 squad with a heavy weapon and 1 squad with the special weapon and the sergeant. Well, obviously in this case only 4 models need to die before we lose any special gear, and in this case only 3 models need to die before we lose special gear. So our unit becomes a little bit less resistant against enemy firepower. It's much easier for the enemy to get to the targets he wants, because just like we want to keep our special weapons alive, the enemy probably wants to see them go. Another disadvantage of splitting them up is that it leads to less concentration, and especially in combat. Let's introduce ourselves to some bad guys. So let's first put them back in 2 groups of 5. And introduce ourselves to a war boss. Now, as long as those 2 units are split up in 2 groups of 5, the war boss has an easier task ahead of him. He can charge either unit, whichever one the orc player prefers to have killed. Maybe the orc player wants to take out the plasma gun, maybe he's worried about the sergeant for some reason. He now has more options. He can charge whatever unit he wants. Also, he gets much less firepower during his charge. Only 5 models will shoot at him during his charge, whereas it was being one big unit, it will be 10 models shooting at him during his charge. Same thing goes in the actual close combat phase. Once the orc is in there, he only has to fight the 5 marines, whereas it was 1 unit of 10 guys, he had to fight all 10 of the marines in the first turn. Now, obviously in the marines turns these 5 guys can collude into the orc and fight him as well, but in the first combat phase he only has to worry about those 5 guys, and since he's striking first, he'll probably kill a few. Let's say he kills 3. Well, in this case he's only facing 3 attacks back against him, while if it was one big unit of 10 models and he killed 3, he would be facing 7 attacks back against him, more than double. So the first scenario with the units split up, it's much better for the orc player when it comes down to the survivability of his orc war boss. So if those are the cons, what exactly are the benefits of having the unit splits up? Well, there are many benefits, and some might not be as clear as the examples we just give for the negatives. So one of the benefits of splitting up is what is called wound overflow. If you have 5 models in the unit, you can only lose 5 models to shooting or close combat or etc. So if the enemy does 6 wounds, he overflows by 1 wound, because you still only lose 5 models, and that extra wound is wasted. If he does 10 wounds, you still just lose 5 guys. But if it were a squad of 10 and he would do 6 wounds, you would lose 6 guys. If it was a squad of 10, he does 10 wounds, you would lose 10 guys. So that can have a really large impact when facing very strong firepower. The other thing that you're much more resilient against is morale. Let's say your enemy is smart and he realizes that he probably has a chance to do wound overflow. So instead of just focusing all his fire on one unit, he's going to split his fire between 2 units. So let's say he's going to cost 6 casualties. Let's divide them evenly. 3 on these and 3 casualties on these. So 6 models dead, no wound overflow. But now it comes to your morale phase and you have to take morale tests. This squad lost 3 wounds, it includes the sergeant, so it has a leadership of 8. So on a 6+, it will lose 1 guy. And since it's Marines, you get to re-roll those. So it's very unlikely that that 1 Marine will lose away. Same thing here, it does not include the sergeant, so it will lose a model on a 5+ and a 6+, it will lose them both. But region reroll, not very likely. What would have happened if we had a squad of 10 guys? Well, first off, the enemy doesn't have to think about whether or not he has to split his fire. He can just focus fire on the guys. So obviously 6 will die. So you lost 6 models. It's leadership 8. So on a 3+, 1 guy will run away. On a 4+, 2 guys, 5+, etc. It's much more likely that you will now lose models to morale than when they were split up in 2 units. So the benefits are, if you split up, the enemy is screwed either way. If he focuses on 1 unit, he loses wounds because there's wound overflow. If he splits his fire between the 2 units, he loses firepower because you get a much better morale result. So splitting your units up makes them more resilient. There are more benefits to splitting your units up or to having multiple small units, but they're better explained with a somewhat broader view of a battlefield. So, what are we faced with here? We're faced with a Tau army, and there are 2 things we might want to consider in our turn. The first thing is the broadside, which is over here and fairly close. A broadside is a very effective shooting unit and thus is a threat to our forces. The best way to stop the broadside from firing is obviously killing it, and the second best way would to get it into combat. So, what do you want to do in our third turn? Kill the broadside or at least get it into combat. But the other thing we need to consider are the 2 fire warriors way back over here, which are claiming that objective. And what's the one thing you want to do is always stop your opponent from claiming objectives, especially in a game where objective cards are used. Because maybe in its next turn the Tau player will draw this objective, claim a victory point, and at that point we are starting to lose because we're 1 point behind. And that is something we want to avoid at all costs. So, what do we want to do in our turn? We want to kill the broadside or get into close combat and kill those 2 fire warriors. So let's see how 1 big unit or 2 small units would handle this situation. First off, 1 big unit. The first thing we want to do is maximize our firepower, so get as close as possible to our targets and prevent heavy weapons from suffering fire penalties. So the plasma cannon over here probably needs to stand still and the rest of the units probably need to close in. So what we're going to end up with is the situation somewhere like this. We've just strengthened out our units, moved as close as possible to both targets as we can, so that we've got an easy charge on the broadside and a possible charge on the fire warriors. Now it's our shooting phase, so now we're faced with a decision. We want to actually use firepower to kill those 2 fire warriors. And then whatever firepower we have left, use it to kill or wound the broadside. So the problem we now face is, how are we going to distribute our fire? You could say, well, bolter weapons are not going to be that effective against the broadside, so we're going to use our bolters to shoot at the fire warriors and then shoot the plasma guns into the broadside. First thing that's going to happen is that we're probably going to have some wound overflow, something we do not want, because we don't want to cause more wounds on the fire warriors than we actually need, because those shots could have been used to harm the broadside. And the other thing we face is uncertainty. maybe the bolters will be enough, but maybe they won't. Maybe we're just unlucky and the fire warriors will survive. In that case, we're gonna have to be forced to do a long charge, and we might end up with failing that charge and having a fire warrior still claiming that objective. Something we clearly don't want. Let's see what changes if we split the unit up into 2 units. So, let's first put them somewhere similar than they were at the start of the battle. So now we have 2 units of 5, these guys, these guys. So first up, just like before, we're going to move these guys towards the broadside, string them out so the plasma cannon can stay still, and we're going to move these guys towards the broadside and the fire warriors as good as we can. So we're going to end up in a almost similar situation. Difference is, first off, when it comes to firing. Now we can first shoot with this unit, the unit with the most bolters. Probably 4 bolters are going to be enough to kill those 2 fire warriors. So we're going to declare our 4 bolters onto the fire warriors and the plasma gun onto the broadside. If the 4 bolters are indeed enough to kill the fire warriors, we've got less wound overflow and we can use the bolters over here to still fire at the broadside. So it's a more effective way to use our firepower. Not because we have more shots, but because we have more information, and because we have more information we can make better decisions. We can suffer less wound overflow and we can make sure that we kill those fire warriors. Because even in the case we're unlucky and the 4 bolter shots are not enough to kill those 2 fire warriors and we just want to be sure, we can use the plasma gun as well to shoot at the fire warriors. Just to make sure that we can kill them the most effective way possible, or at least the most certain way possible. Then, in our char fates, we're in a similar situation than before, but let's say the fire warriors, for miraculous reasons, still survive. We now have 2 units that then declare a possible charge on the fire warriors. I mean, they're still very far away, about 9 inches or so, so it's unlikely that we get the charge, but if you get 1 unit, 1 roll. If you get 2 units, you've got 2 rolls, more likely to succeed in getting those fire warriors in combat. So by splitting up our forces into 2 units, we've gained one big advantage, and that advantage is that we can get more information about what is happening in our game, and we can make better decisions and more certain decisions. And that is one of the biggest reasons to take more units that are smaller instead of bigger units. They might not change so much statistically, but they do change a lot in certainty, and you gain a lot more information by using 2 units than 1 unit. They're more flexible, you've got more information, and usually you're just better off at making decisions when you have 2 small units instead of 1 big unit.